everyone. Welcome back to the InvestBall podcast. Today's guest with me, Jeremiah Desmarais. Jeremiah is the CEO of Advisorist, a marketing platform for financial advisors and insurance agents, where he's helped over 10,000 individuals scale their practice. Jeremiah is also a member of the Forbes Coaches Council and has helped scale the marketing function of several other companies. Jeremiah, thank you so much for coming on today.
Cameron, awesome to hang out with you today. Thank you.
I think next time I'm going to fly down and meet you, and we'll go on a walk together. I was telling you before the call, I'm very jealous of the steps you get in.
I started this morning at 3, so I'm like a super early bird. So I was actually reviewing the final prompts on our GPTs for advisors, and I think I got like 6,000 steps by 6 a.m. It was a good day.
Apple tells me every day you did not hit your step goal, and I'm like reminded constantly I'm not active enough.
Cursed technology reminds me how lazy I am.
Exactly. I used to have like my Garmin watch on, and then I took that off 3 months ago, and I think my productivity, my fitness has gone down dramatic.
We do need our robot overlords for a few things.
Exactly. So you have a very interesting background, especially with Advisorist. I'm curious, could you share a little bit about your story? I know you got started in Montreal and how that shaped your pathway to founding a very successful advisor marketing business.
Sure. Born and raised in Montreal, and right around 2000, the US dollar was crushing the Canadian dollar. I had a goal to retire my parents early. I was really bent on that. At that time, it was a lot easier to come into the US. I came down first, stayed in Brooklyn for a while, and then ended up in Chicago and got hired by a little startup of scrappy website builders, we'll call ourselves. We were all like, I think our average age was maybe 22, 23. And we stumbled onto an insurance agent who needed a website. And so we built a website for him. And when we asked him to create an insurance plan or give us insurance quotes, he showed up at our office one day with all these papers all over the place. Like, oh, this is this carrier, and this is Aetna, this is Blue Cross. And we were like, are you kidding me? You're showing us paper? This was at the time when sites like Orbitz had just come out, right? I'm really old school there. But like you could type in, it's Kayak for all you young kids, right? You could type in, I want to fly from here to here, and then it just spreadsheeted them. And we're like, why doesn't anyone in insurance do this? It seems like really obvious. Progressive had not come out yet. Geico had not come out yet. So we built a little quoting engine, and that just set our company on the pace of riches and niches. And we decided to do a hard pivot into the niche of insurance. And that little team of 6 grew to 109, and then grew to 1,000. And then ended up being sold for over $1 billion. And the way that I grew that company, I was hired as a graphic designer who then became the de facto lead generation guy, the de facto marketing guy. And having no experience, I basically had to hustle and scrape and grind my way to find ways to generate leads. And I had zero budget. And every month, the quota went up. So you get pretty creative when you have very limited resources. And that's basically what happened. So the only thing I could afford to do was give my time because I had no money. So what I did is my team and I worked hard to create educational events, webinars. Back then it was GoToWebinar was the only player in the game. So we just did a bunch of very super valuable webinars. And people started like paying attention, like, hey, who are these guys? These guys are teaching cool stuff. And embedded in all the education was always like a small call to action or, a solution that we had or something like that. But we always tried to like outdo everybody in value that we gave. By virtue of that, I was brought in by Bain Capital to go to another Chicago-based company that was another insurtech firm. And I ran marketing there for a year. That company was sold for over $1 billion to private equity. And then basically, because my formula was always lead first with value and give a ton, I had accumulated this group of advisors in the insurance space at first who knew me as the guy who was like doling out, the gems. And then when I left on my own, I took my LinkedIn list, which was 5,000 connections that I had up to that point, and I created a newsletter. And I did the same thing. I said, all right, I'm going to write to this audience every day for 30 days and just give them a really good insight every day, and I won't stop. And then I launched my first product on the back end of that, and that was the birth of Advisorist 10 years ago. And that's always been my philosophy, is to lead with value. And now I have the blessing and privilege of traveling the world and helping advisors from exotic locations.
Very fascinating. So what I took from that was, if a company wants to become a unicorn to bring you on.
Well, yes, this whole thing is actually just a commercial to hire me for consulting services. Thank you, Cameron.
And that's the show, everyone.
And scene.
You did raise an interesting point. It's funny because we deal with advisors all the time. I've noticed they still somewhat seem to follow that, not coming to the office with spreadsheets necessarily, but information dumping on clients and trying to weave that story. Curious, have you seen a big evolution from 2000 with that first company to now on how advisors are storytelling and winning business with clients?
I think that there's still a bit of a sickness in the industry that a lot of advisors rely on software and tools to tell stories instead of human stories. And I think that software and spreadsheets and tools are amazing if and when you have the emotional buy-in. That's when you bring it in, because we all make decisions with emotion and then we justify with logic, right? I like to use the illustration of riding an elephant. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to do that, but when we were in Zimbabwe, my wife and I, we had the privilege of going to this facility that rescues orphan elephants that are abandoned in the wild, and they raise them until they're ready to go back in. And they allow you to have a ride on the elephants. So it's quite an experience, because you come up to this massive creature and it is so powerful and so large, but it's so gentle in its aura and its nature.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get up there, the guide likes to let you think you're going to be controlling the elephant. But if the elephant wants to go in one direction, it's going there. It's not listening to you. And so when we train advisors, we actually use that as an analogy, that when you're selling, you're always selling to the emotional part of the brain or the elephant. And the logic is like the little rider riding on top of the elephant, right? Everyone tries to sell to the logic. Hey, I mean, look at this. I mean, you're going to be buying income. That means, when you hit 65, you're really going to get this paycheck month after month. I mean, look at this chart, right? And it's not successful because they haven't sold to the elephant. They didn't sell to the emotion. But if you've sold to the emotion and you have that engagement, then you justify by talking to the rider, and the rider's going to be like, yeah, that sounds like a very logical decision. So that would be my long answer to your very short question.
So with that said, like there's all the talk on like breakaway advisors, the great wealth transition. There's a lot of change happening in the wealth industry right now. What do you think the few trends we're seeing in the industry are here to stay, and how an advisor should adapt their business model?
Mm-hmm. So, and this is third party. So this is not, JD, pontificating. As early as a year ago, the searches online for financial coaches far exceeded the searches for financial advisors. And what that tells me is that you have a new way of thinking about money that people are looking for help on. And I think that is a fantastic trend to capitalize on, to rebrand or brandscape your practice as offering financial coaching. There's a really great company that I'm invested in called Currents that has a software that helps advisors do income under management. And what it allows advisors to do is to help everybody create this pool of income by basically interrupting the flow to their checking account, creating a reservoir that gets put into savings or vehicles like whole life insurance, annuities. You can put it in crypto, you can put it anywhere. And basically, you're creating almost this forest of clients that you're nurturing over time that are now magically adding money where previously they said they didn't have any money. And that to me is an example of a trend that's happening because people are looking for more than just retirement advice and wealth management. We have this huge contingency of millennials that will be inheriting trillions of dollars that are not looking for an advisor, they're looking for a coach. And I think if advisors were able to add coaching, and what's nice about coaching, you can scale it, right? Like you could charge somebody $100 a month and have access to a group community that you host in school or Kajabi or Circle or even Facebook, and be providing advice to a lot of people at once while you're nurturing clients on their path to success. You know, one of my business partners, he has a community like that. He has hundreds of clients in this one community that ask a bunch of questions related to finance and investing, and a portion of them move their assets to him, and then the rest they just didn't he works only with a million and up, but the rest he can still serve in some way, and he has a nice MRR that covers all of his staff's expenses plus profit. I think that's a big trend. I think the second trend, only because I'm wholly biased towards this platform, but is going to be the rise of LinkedIn creators that understand how to use DMs and niche marketing. And I only say that is one of my biased. So the first trend was third party based. Second trend is my own observation and, hundreds of success stories, is that to me is one of the most overlooked platforms. But I'm really excited and thrilled to see so many advisors turning to LinkedIn to start driving valuable content, sharing really great insights, being human, being themselves, and then developing relationships in the DMs through sell by chat strategies. So that would be number 2. And you want a third trend?
If you have one.
If I have one. You know what? I would say that we recently launched a new program that coaches advisors how to scale their practice to $1 million in revenue. But here's the catcher: doing it 4 days a week. And I think this is a trend that is global. I think people are sick of working, advisors included. I think work hasn't brought the joy that a lot of people thought it was because it's not structured properly. I do believe that advisors inherently are some of the most giving and genuine people I've ever met. Most of them, to their own detriment, outgive themselves and end up giving away a lot of time and not experiencing the exchange in value. So when you actually, it's interesting, when you look at the Fisher Investments ads that are going out now, targeting people with $500,000 of assets or more, they've all shifted their target from a retirement to income streams you can have starting at 50. And what's happened is there's a global conversation of people wanting to have multiple streams of income that doesn't really feel like work, right? Like people who have side hustles, side gigs, selling merch, e-com, things like that. And I think advisors are feeling the same way. They want their business to be fun. They don't want it to be a drag. And I think that the next big trend is realizing you can take your business to 4 days a week, just as you can help people retire stress-free or manage their money and sleep well at night. And I think that tapping into that conversation about lifestyle, about travel, about what life really means. And I think what we're seeing is a comeback from what happened in the 80s. The 80s was the me generation. It was all about money. The movie Wall Street came out. Greed is good. That whole ethos. And then because it's not a value that humans can thrive on for a long time, greed, you had this awakening in the 90s, like, oh my goodness, we have to change. And then into the 2000s and the hope that came with that, right? And I think what we're seeing now is people are very disenfranchised. They're very discouraged about what they see in the leaders of the world. And so they're turning to other things to find fulfillment. Whereas previously they had hope in higher powers, they've lost that hope. And now they're looking to things where they can create hope within themselves or something they can control. Because when you look at Maslow's hierarchy, if you don't have something that fulfills you, right, you're not truly fulfilled. If you don't have something you can hang on to, you need that security of, I forget what the first level is, but you need food, the basics, food, clothing, shelter. Then you get into levels of self-fulfillment, and people are seeing that their base needs are starting to be shaken by business, government, politics, right? Things like that. And so they're like, okay, I need to really take ownership of this because I don't know who's going to take care of me. And I believe that that's happening everywhere. So to put a finer point on it, I believe that there's a trend that advisors who want to build a practice but enjoy their life at the same time. And I see more and more advisors wanting to do that, which is why we've crafted a whole program to give advisors at least a day back every week.
You raised a ton of interesting points that I want to double click on with you.
Sure.
First point.
Well, you can put your glasses on. That means
I
things
did.
must be getting serious.
Yeah, the IQ just went up.
Should I put my glasses on? Because actually, no. Here's what we do. I put my glasses on. You ask me a question, and then I take them off.
So fade. I thought I was just talking to Ryan Reynolds there for a second with the glasses on.
Another Canadian brother, right? Let's give it up.
Exactly.
People in the US are like, no, he's ours now.
It'll all be the same soon anyway. So the first part, that company you invested in that you said it's essentially I'm assuming, just to clarify, your income stream that comes in, it's taking some of that money off the top. And now people are, before they'd see $5,000 in their checking accounts and they feel inclined to spend all of that, versus they see 4,000 and 1,000 automatically goes to an investment program, how that grows over time. Is that sort of the behavior behind it?
That's precisely it. Yeah. And it's all based on neuroscience, reducing friction, because it's very hard to save money and to stick to a budget. But if it's done automatically, you don't think about it. So the way that they train advisors is how much do you need to live on comfortably without feeling like you're a miser? And they'll say, okay, I have 4,000. Okay, great. Well, you're getting 5,000 every month. Why don't we take 1,000 and put it in this reserve? We'll meet every quarter, and then we'll decide where to put the money. So the conversation for the advisor becomes not, do you have money to invest? It's, oh, look, I can see you've got 30,000 hanging out here. Where would you like to put this? And the advisor becomes an advisor that manages income, which is the place you want to be, right? The other fascinating thing, just a quick story on this, is I was interviewing because I was originally an investor and then an advisor to the company, and interviewing a lot of the advisors using it. It was fascinating to see, going back to that whole trend about people taking ownership, right? There was a woman that came on as a client who went on the current system for 3 months. And she realized that every month, do you know how much she was spending on Amazon impulse buys? $3,000 a month on Amazon impulse buys.
That's
just
crazy.
like, oh, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy $3,000. Oh my goodness. So this woman, in the space of a year, accumulated more money than she had ever thought she could ever save, was able to get into life insurance, was able to start investing, but all because it was done without thinking.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. So you raised another point that we talk about quite a bit, as well as this transition to this financial coach. How do you define a financial coach? To summarize some of what you said before, not to put words in your mouth, but it's opening up more of this community aspect and taking like a higher level lens on giving people information and then drawing them into your firm? Or do you see it more as, I'm not here just to manage your investments and your financial plan. I am like the go-to person for anything financial stress related in your life?
Yeah. So you have to have a mechanism to support that if you're going to go out and lead that way. And what I mean by that is if you're willing to step out as a coach, there's some advisors out there right now that on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook are giving little tips. Like there's an advisor, we discussed him on my show the other day. One of his tips was delete all the apps on your phone that relate to impulse buys. So delete the Amazon app, delete
Uber Eats.
Uber Eats, delete this, delete this. And one of the girls on my team said she followed that advice and she saved $100 that month. And that was a lot for her to save an extra $100 as a single mom, raising a boy. That was big for her, right? The mechanism that you want to have though, but then, I could hear some advisors listening to this podcast being like, yeah, that's not my audience. I only deal with like a million, minimum million assets under management. Great. That's fantastic. But if you have a mechanism like a community or a coaching program where you take your knowledge and you record it and put it in a Kajabi platform or School or Circle, you could be charging people $100 a month or $1,000 a year, right? Get 2 months free for access to your knowledge. And all the people you couldn't serve now become income to you while you're serving a bigger audience, and it's all automated. There's 2 advisors out of California doing a really cool job of this. They have a YouTube channel, and although they're only going for people with assets of at least $500,000, they have a really clever strategy. And I must share it, and I'm low-key jealous I didn't think about it, but I will share it. So their strategy is book a call with us, and they ask a survey. If you don't have the amount of money, the 2-hour strategy session is $10,000. Or you can have all our knowledge and do it yourself for $297. Genius, right? Because in marketing, we have the psychology of the anchor. Whatever price you're selling it at, always quote a price that's so high that seems ridiculous. So when you quote the real price, people are like, okay, that sounds like a lot, So that's marketing 101. But I thought that was very clever. So what they do is they have a revenue channel based off their YouTube that maybe only 1% of the people that ever watch their videos will even qualify. They still get them, and they still get revenue to fund all the VAs and the video editors that will, fuel their channel. So the big point is this, right? Is if you want to go out as a coach and you still want to earn income from it, make sure you have a vehicle to put people to that's like a low ticket, offering. Could be an ebook, could be a mini course, could be a community. And if you're not ready to do that, because if you start giving out advice that appeals to people that have, that are making less than $100,000 a year, you're going to get exactly those kind of leads. And that's not the leads you want. So you just have to be careful, right? So what we teach, for example, for LinkedIn, the people on LinkedIn make 3 times more money than the people on Facebook and Instagram. So for me, I like to do the lazy way and the least amount of work. And so I don't post on social media. I don't follow anybody on social media. I just go to the one place where I know I can get the most amount of results for the least amount of work, and that's LinkedIn. So what we teach there is advisors should develop a niche. Like we have one guy, Jeff Dietz. He was a former engineer. So what we helped him do is to go after IT professionals and engineers, and the guy's crushing it. He's doing a combination of IULs, annuities, whole life, AUM, but he's only going after one niche. And so if you're going to be a coach to a niche that has the money. Another advisor we have, Nick, he had never worked with doctors before, but he decided to target doctors on LinkedIn. And he started getting about 3 warm conversations with doctors every week. A niche, he's coaching to the right niche. Same thing, we had Jeff Lamont out of Toronto. He had picked one niche that really didn't have a lot of income on LinkedIn, And then we helped him find another one. And now he's like the go-to advisor for attorneys. And he's got some of the top attorneys in Canada as his clients now from LinkedIn. So you've got coaching in general, and then you've got coaching to specific professionals.
Interesting. And I guess with that, you probably have to gear your practice up to be able to support that niche as well. So if you're servicing doctors, you have to understand the mechanics of like the practice that they're running and uh, their income streams that they get, the value of their business, and weaving the marketing story around those pain points.
You know what? I wish it was that hard, Cameron, because it would make my job look so much more, intelligent. But what I tell advisors is progress, not perfection. That's number one. And everything is figure outable. So when you're going after a new niche, none of these people that I just mentioned had ever sold to that niche before we told them to go and do it, which is surprising, right? But the one, I'm not going to tell you which one because you probably wouldn't want me to say this, but well, he said it publicly. Actually, I'm interviewing him next week, and I will ask him about this. But he, what he would do is he would get popular articles off of Forbes and Investopedia. Let's say something like "The 7 Secret Sins of Retirement," and then he would add the niche's name at the end of it. The 7 Secret Sins of Retirement for. I'm just make up a niche now for business owners, for Christian business owners. And he basically took all these articles, used AI, just added, as if it was for them, and it was totally applicable. And people started reading them and engaging with them. And what's really interesting, there was a third-party study done by Cogent that high net worth investors are more likely to trust an article on LinkedIn than any other place. And after Bloomberg, LinkedIn is the number one source for financial advice that they go to. And they're more disposed to have investing conversations on LinkedIn because the psychology is different, right? When you go to Facebook, you're not thinking, I want to have an intelligent conversation about managing my finances. You're like kittens, arguing, hate, doom scrolling, right? But when you switch over to LinkedIn, you're like business, right? I should put my glasses on. Business.
For now, it's devolving away from that though.
Yeah, there's some funny things happening, but what's really interesting, 98% of the success on LinkedIn is not the posting. You can be so successful on LinkedIn and never post anything. We have tons of clients who don't post a thing on LinkedIn, but are smashing it because it's not about the posting.
So, since as I understand it, the majority of advisors today that we work with at least typically rely on referrals. Do you weave as maybe with like Advisorist a funnel or a feedback loop within there where I'm going to target Christian business owners to get that top of funnel built out, and then that ends up creating a referral funnel for me where those now clients or those people engaged within my community will refer me business who also happens to be within that niche?
Yeah, it's a wonderful virtuous cycle. Once you become the thought leader, I'm still looking for the right word. Once you become the thought leader for a specific niche, it's a lot easier to dominate it. You go from being the small fish in a big pond to being the big fish in a very little pond. And you learn how to speak the language that they have. Like, for example, the other day, I had a coaching call with an advisor, and he told me that he was, his niche was Christian business owners, because that's what he has on his LinkedIn profile. And then I told him, I said, so if you're going after other believers, here's the 3 things you should think about. And he goes, are you a believer? and because I know what the language is, right? So every niche speaks in a certain way. And when you're in that niche and you start to play in that niche, and I use the word play intentionally. I'm not being flippant or treating your business as something you should play with, but we've discovered that this is just a little tangential point, because I noticed that if you allow me for a moment, most advisors, they cringe at the idea of niche because it makes them fear missing out on other business. So let me give you a distinction. The distinction is date a niche for 90 days. You don't have to say no to other people, but you can date a niche. Some people think about a niche like I have to marry it, like I'm meeting a woman or a man for the first time and I'm forced to marry them on the first date. That's the wrong way to think about it. Instead, think about it as an experiment for 90 days. And what we've noticed is that some advisors need to go through 2 or 3 niches tops to find the right one for them. Some hit it the first time, but the ones that stay and become everything to everybody never reach the level of success that people who dominate inside niches. There's even an advisor in the States, his niche is other people who love dogs. His website has him walking his dogs into his office and his staff having dogs all over the place. And so they attract people who like dogs. So it can be as simple as a dog niche. Now, will he reject somebody that likes cats? Probably not. But when people see the dog niche, they're like, I'm down for the dogs, right? We dog people are kind of weird that way. So back to the original point, right? You had asked me about referrals. So that was a little soapbox. Thank you for coming to my second TED Talk. So back to the virtuous cycle. What happens is that all of these, let's just use Christian business owners. They know other Christian business owners. And if you create mechanisms where it's easy for them to connect, so if you create a LinkedIn group for Christian business owners in Chicago, Illinois, you're going to get a really fired up group of people. And it's going to be easy for you to do local events, right? You can have them out. You have an evening where you do gatherings, you do client appreciation, and then you have them each bring a friend who's a business owner, right? And that becomes very easy to start getting the referrals. The only thing that I don't like about referrals is that they're not scalable unless you're very intentional about getting them. And there's some people that do that and they do it very well and they don't need anything. But unless you're willing to do that, it's not a scalable thing. I would use referrals as the cream on the top. But if you're really intentional about growth, you need to have a system in place that puts a predictable amount of people into your calendar or your chats in order to warm them up into your calendar every week.
Okay. Very interesting. I unfortunately have to cut this conversation off because I have a hard stop. But I only made it through, I think, one question I had of a series of about a dozen. But Jeremiah, I think you are an oracle of knowledge, and I would love to sit down with you and we'll dedicate some more time to this because I think as we understand how we work with clients, I think the marketing piece is that one big untapped potential. I think you have a lot of good insights to share. If anyone's interested in learning more about you, where's the best place they can connect? I'm assuming you're going to say LinkedIn because you're a big LinkedIn fanatic, but where's the best place they can connect with you over?
That would be almost like a prize if you can figure out how to spell my name and find me on LinkedIn. Like I will definitely give you the connect because I'm at 30,000 already and I have to keep deleting people every week because after 30,000, you can't I just can't anymore. But I have some room and I would love to connect, but I would also like to give a gift to everybody. So we've created a self-assessment. It takes 60 seconds to do. It'll ask you 12 questions and there's a little Star Wars Easter egg in there as well as Star Trek. And it will give you a personalized assessment as to what parts of your practice you need to improve with recommendations. So it'll tell you on a score of 100 how you're doing based on 3 different areas of attracting, converting, and sales. And I think I've embedded about 270 different, no, sorry, that's my book. I've embedded about 70 different ideas that you can implement based on where you're weak in. And you can take that study at joinadv.com/scale. Like join, JOIN, ADV, short for advisors, joinadv.com/scale. 60 seconds, we'll email you the PDF. And if you want to talk about it, there's a scale specialist that you can book a call with and just have a conversation with them about your results. So that's a gift to all the listeners.
And we'll leave a link in the show notes as well for anyone who wants to spend 60 seconds out of their day. It sounds like they get a ton of value back.
We try.
Okay, Jeremiah, thank you once again for coming on. Hopefully we can chat some more in the future.
Look forward to it, brother. Thank you, Cameron. Keep up the great work.